Well, good evening, friends and associates across town and across the globe. It's the 11th of December. Welcome to Public Affairs Public Access. I'm your host, Paul Colby, back for about the umpteenth time to tell you what nobody else is telling you about what's really going on all around you. And if you've noticed some of it, good for you. If all of this comes as news to you that you hear about tonight, well, then you need to pay more attention. We're going to cover a lot of ground, as we always do, but even so, it's going to be relaxed because I'm enjoying my hot tea. It goes with the season, you know. There's so many flavors available these days, from herbs you recognize and from some things that must have been created in a laboratory. These are primarily real ingredients I'm enjoying tonight. Well, we've just seen another Black Friday go the way of all flesh and the way of all history. I mean, that is to say, it's behind us. But this Black Friday, there's new developments this Black Friday, and then there's more of the same. One thing we always like to look at this time of year is what was most popular, what kind of gifts were people snarfing up at high speed, and what was flying off the shelves in the stores this week. Well, I'll kind of summarize that for you. One of the most popular gifts this Black Friday was body armor, and I don't just mean bulletproof vests, but you see, the climate in America these days, I don't think I have to get too detailed, but things seem to be pretty nasty out there. A lot of parts of the country seem like the Wild West again. And so a lot of people want to kind of have an added level of comfort when they're out in public. Now, me, myself, I picked out some outstanding body armor this year on Black Friday. I think I picked something that looks, you know, well, understated, but at the same time elevated, you know. And there were so many things to choose from. I almost wanted to go with a Katy Perry kind of a look or something with a lot of hair, but I have a lot of hair already, and I don't need more down in the lower regions of the torso. Anyway, you too probably picked up a little body armor while you were out there, and if not, I wonder why. A surprisingly popular item this year is all-weather pianos. And people seem to know that this is going on, but they don't know why. And I think I can shed a little bit of light on that. Here, like in Houston, where they build a whole lot of new living spaces, but mostly vertically rather than horizontally. I mean, condominiums just blocks away from me house thousands of people, it seems like, so they're in little bitty places. And a lot of the piano players who move to these condominiums and so forth, they really don't have room inside for a piano. And so what a lot of them do, most of these places have a balcony or a patio, and that tends to be the only place where you can put a damn piano. And so that's why the all-weather pianos are so popular. And also, a lot of the kids coming out of music schools today, they're not so interested in playing Carnegie Hall or even working in you know, chamber music sort of boutique atmosphere. They like to get out among the hoi polloi and do their piano playing at luau's and barbecues, which often as not get rained out. And so that, I think, explains. And also, don't forget this, families are being encouraged to go outside. You know, kids playing their video games all the time and never going outside to play. Well, parents teaching their children to play the piano or having them being taught to play the piano are finding that if they do it outside, it covers two birds with one stone. See what I mean? Anyway, enough on all-weather pianos. I only bought a couple because I already have a few other things like that. Elephants. Let me tell you something about elephant. Have you heard the expression this year, probably more times than ever before, that somebody doesn't want to talk about the elephant in the room? Well, a lot of Americans, they don't seem to have understood that that is a metaphorical kind of a statement. They actually believe that other people have elephants in their rooms, and they don't. So to keep up with the Joneses or the Robertses or the Smiths, they had to go get an elephant for their room. And fortunately for those people, there are a lot of elephants out there. They're, the solid ones like, ceramic or marble or whatever, or the inflatable ones, which weigh a lot less, and you can move them around, and elephants of all sizes. So almost everybody who didn't have an elephant in their room is going to have one this Christmas and for the balance of the 2015 season. What they're going to do with them. But you know what? Some people who want to know, not just keep up with the Joneses, but outdo the Joneses, want an elephant for every room. Good news for them was there are all sorts of deals this year where if you buy more than one elephant, you get special pricing. So in my case, even though I already had 2 elephants in the room, I added a third inflatable one. And so now whenever I go out, in case there's not an elephant in the room I'm going to, I can bring my own. So how about that? Heavy subject. Anyway, another popular item. You've heard probably that Apple is going to be introducing in this coming year its Apple Watch. So you take your computing with you. Well, other companies are getting tired of Apple being there first all the time, and so a competitor, I think the name is Son of Samsung or something like that. Anyway, I bought one of these things that hit the market early, trying to compete with Apple. And as a matter of fact, I have a picture of it, don't I? Yeah. These things, I think Apple is going to probably do a better job. This thing is extremely heavy. As you can see, it doesn't have a face as such. There's nothing to read, and it doesn't actually tell you the time verbally. It's kind of an approximation. It gives you a shock every 15 minutes. So if you know what time it was when you started with the first shock, then you know it's 2:15 and then 2:30. Well, anyway, I found it to be absolutely inconvenient, almost useless. I had to have it surgically removed because the thing they won't tell you about these cheap imitation talking watches on your arm, you're not supposed to take them off. They put them on and then they stay there. So I'm just warning you. Pretty low-tech thing. And speaking of low-tech, another big item this year is in the phone department. Some people in this country and elsewhere, I understand, are tired of smartphones. They're a little bit too sophisticated. They don't really know how to use all the buttons and all of the apps, and they get confused when they use them. So some entrepreneurs have been introducing average intelligence phones that you can pick up on this Black Friday, and I tried one out. I ended up not buying it. I'll tell you a couple of things about it. For example, it can't remember names or addresses any better than you can. I mean, it gets them wrong all the time, and it doesn't have any special functions, and there are no applications available. I mean, it just is what it is. It's an average intelligence phone. But you know how the Apple phones have Siri, so you can ask a question, and even competitors have their versions. Google has their version. You ask a question to your smartphone, and it gives you an answer. Well, I tried it out on these average intelligence phones. I said, for example, how far is it to Duluth? And it said, how the hell would I know? You know? And then I asked it, what is my shoe size? And it said, how the hell would I know? Pretty soon I figured out that even though it can speak like the smartphone, it only has one sentence. So I think after a while you'd probably get tired of that. Although some people who like to think they're smarter than somebody else can at least think they're smarter than their phone, because their phone always says, how the hell would I know? So that covers most of the hot items this year. But there's also clothing. There's clothing and fashion. You know, there's always something new. And this year it was 5-piece suits. Now, I'm a man about town. I dress dapper, you know, and I like to look good. And so I have a number of 3-piece suits. You know, everybody knows, you know, your coat and your pants and your vest looks pretty smart, you know, having that third piece in there. But I'll be darned if I could figure out what is supposed to be in a 5-piece suit, because I was tempted to buy one. But I couldn't find out, so I called one of the stores that's selling them, just trying to get well, here, I think I've got a tape of that, don't I?
Thank you for your inquiry regarding the 5-piece suits which are currently on sale. Unfortunately, we cannot describe the components of the suits over the telephone. Please visit one of our retail stores to examine them for yourself.
See what I mean? I'm thinking about going in just because I have no idea what they're talking about, but if you need a 5-piece suit, they're, like I say, flying off the shelf, so you better get yours now. As for Black Friday, before I leave this subject now, Black Friday, like all American phenomena, it's a work in progress, and so there are already discussions. There are things going on. In other words, the evolving Black Friday scenario. First thing is, of course, your retail outlets would like to move Black Friday up further in the calendar, not just to Thanksgiving, but the new move, I think, is for right after Halloween, which is pretty scary. Oh, that sounds like a joke to me. Pretty funny. And also, okay, development number 2. I don't think we'll have a Halloween Black Friday yet. But we have seen a lot more online shopping. And so that's why you have people referring to the whole mess as Hack Friday. Because, you know, a lot of people have been aware of huge caches of credit card information being hacked by these clever impresarios who then use the credit card numbers to do all sorts of nefarious things. And so Hack Friday is in the forefront of consciousness. But, you know, it's not all bad. With all this online shopping, you think, well, maybe somebody's going to steal my number or blah, 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 blah. But for me, personally, turned out to be a boon this year. I got, just last week, UPS delivered 2 ceramic elephants that I did not order. So somebody, you know, in this Hack Friday motif got the order. Of course, it says I already paid for it, and I didn't. And just this afternoon, I got 60 gallons of calamine lotion that I didn't order. Not that I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that. But anyway, the other trend that we see with this Black Friday phenomenon is sending people out shopping, but not locally, somewhere far away. It's just a few examples this year, but it's going to catch on. Like, yeah, this one here, pretty interesting to me. I always wanted to go to Dominique Verboten, but I didn't even know what shops are there, so I passed it up. I did get the offer, and that wasn't the only one. I think out there in the Virgin Islands, you know, Pencil Box out there, St. Thomas Island. There you get special prices for a couple to. Now, let me tell you something about this that makes me feel a little uneasy. I talked to a couple of friends who took one of these offers at face value and went down to Pencil Box to shop, and I haven't heard from them since. So it's been more than a week, and I don't think that's. I mean, I've seen posts on Facebook for people asking where their cousin is who went, down to Dominique Verboten to go shopping. So I think something weird might be going on, and I encourage you not to be part of this trend yet. It looks a little dangerous. Well, so much for shopping. The other thing that just passed, the midterm elections, and the big picture part of it. The big picture part of it is, like in most of these midterm scenarios, the party in power loses a big chunk, and so the Republicans took a lot of seats, a lot of governors' offices, and so they're going to be talking about their mandates or their woman dates this year because they were elected in droves. Now, it is interesting, of course, that these ones who are elected have across the board for Congress having about 11% approval rating, and so they're always lambasting the chief executive who has a sloppy 40% rating, and so it is interesting that they're even less popular than the person they think they have a mandate to drag out of town on a tractor. And why do I say tractor? Well, it's a long story. Well, let me focus on some of these races you may not have paid attention to, because I think when you look at these other developments, you can see kind of what the political landscape is going to look like in the immediate future. One guy, a libertarian, Jim Shorts, he comes to mind. He's a very popular figure. He's very telegenic, shows up good on TV and that sort of a thing. And popular where he came from when he was just riding horses, and doing stunts in movies. But then he decided to go into politics, okay? And he just took the regional area where he comes from by storm with a whole new approach to the American economy, or at least I think that's what it is, and that is what he calls the tractor-driven economy. It's sort of a vision of the future that he has, and he calls it an American response to Chinese bold hucksterism, whatever that means. Anyway, if I properly understand and I did read it a little bit. It's a pretty long book, but I'd say he basically is planning to replace everything with tractors, okay? You should drink more water like I'm trying to show you here. This is kind of like a learning experience for you observers. Anyway, if you think it's far-fetched that tractors will start replacing all other vehicles and not just vehicles, hey, right here in my neighborhood, I think, yeah, we've got the slide up now. The Walmart across the street is already putting in a parking lot for tractor use. What this is all about and how it's supposed to benefit the economy, I'm not absolutely sure. But as I say, Jim Shorts has the idea that tractors are going to fundamentally turn everything around in America, and he's plowing up some new territory just by talking about it that way, and he's making a lot of other people talk about it that way, and I'm sure he's making the tractor industry pretty excited. I wonder if his campaign contributions came from tractor land, wherever that is. I think it's in Georgia, something like that. Another thing to watch, there's this guy in the Deep South, a Republican, Morris Bulba, that you may have heard about in the past. He's the kind of guy, these days, bigoted, racist sort of individuals, they sort of repackage themselves so that they don't seem like what they are. You know, even though there are still some of them out there, I think we know that. And this gentleman, Mr. Morris Bulba, is pretty unrepentant about what he thinks about people who are not like himself. I guess when it comes right down to it, you could just say he's what we call a cracker, or what some people would call a cracker. But that's not all. This is a multidimensional bigot, because this guy is also behind some sort of new wave of using fracking here in America. And he's even promoting a book. He's promoting a book by Dr. Otto Schwarf. I couldn't find out very much about Dr. Schwarf, but I'm suspicious. Anyway, in his book about fracking like there's no tomorrow, see how he mentions how tractors can pave a new America. That got me to thinking that there must be something weird going on here, because, well, Jim Shorts doesn't seem like, you know, a cracker fracker. But you know, Morris is a cracker fracker, and as a result of that, he generated an opponent, just on the basis of who he is, an opponent named Otis Trove, whose slogan was, "Fire the cracker fracker." Fire the crack. And that didn't stop there. Then a slacker entered the race, Bailey Frump, who doesn't care one way or the other about fracking or cracking, or anyway, as you can see, the slogans got really out of hand now that we have Squire the Fracker, Cracker, Tracker, Slacker. That's, it's kind of hard to explain, and I guess you know who won, of course, so I don't have to explain that, but anyway, strange, very strange. There was a lady, a Democrat, Jennifer Sequoia. They just call her Jen Sequoia, you know, for short. Most people call her that. And she believes that politics has become so dirty, and actually her word is filthy, I think is what she says more often. It's become so filthy that she says that well, you know, I picked up this sign of hers at one of her political rallies about committed to being committed. But, well, I think I've got a tape here, a recording. Let's hear it in her own words.
As I have said many times throughout this campaign, I think anyone who runs for office these days must be crazy. That certainly includes me. So I am committed to being committed. If I win this election, I am going to be institutionalized for my own good. So I really won't be able to do much for you, but I still need you to vote for me instead of that nut Mother Teresa. She's already dead. Obviously, she can't do much for you either.
Well, there, you heard it in her own words. It's my understanding that Jen Sequoia checked into St. Virus the Perch Mental Hospital just last week, and there hadn't been a single tweet so far. So good for her, I guess. We may see more of her, and maybe we won't. Another weird one out there on the landscape. You may remember Congressman Ben Ghazi. He's been taking a lot of flack here for the last couple of years for some of the stuff he says. I mean, he's not in the same league as Morris Bulba, but he just seems like somebody who doesn't talk while all the cylinders are running, or words to that effect. Well, that sounds like another tractor analogy, doesn't it? In any case, he has an interesting position. He says it is very obvious that we're exporting jobs, and he doesn't apologize for it because they are low-paying jobs, what we're exporting, and that helps the job creators. But he has a new approach, which he says will make a big difference, and his approach is to send people overseas with the jobs. So right now there's not that many opportunities, but there are some. For example, you can go over to Ekbar, wherever the hell that is, and answer phones and make about as much money as you would here sitting at home answering your own phone. To see, as an example, they seem to have nice buildings there. They're also hiring genetically optimized seed planters in the Amazon basin. I guess genetically optimized seed is the new politically correct term for those poisonous GMOs that were, and you can make up to $7 a day. So if you're just, sitting on the veranda reading the sports page, then maybe he's got a point there. There's some, and there are also immediate openings in other remote areas for not only fracker packers, like we've been talking about them a little bit, or cracker stackers. That's an unskilled position, but it's a colorful one, and even slacker sackers, if you're willing to go overseas. And that's what Benghazi says you should do. You should be willing to go where the jobs are, because that's where he was planning to send you. That's really interesting to me. Anyway, there's a lot more that could be said about that, but I think we should give it time. Let's just see if it works or not. It is an interesting idea. But the big picture, as I was saying, the big picture is that the Republicans are going to take control now. So when the Republicans take control, then that means that Harry Reid's out of a job. He's got to step down. Who's going to take over? Well, look at you'd be surprised at what's being talked about in the Republican Party unless you follow these things as closely as I do, and unless you have the intelligent, informed sources that I bring to the table here, which, it's kind of interesting. But before I talk about that, I've got to mention a couple of the prominent Republicans here who have made loud statements lately. One of those is Mango Stroller, and his big gripe is about nut neutrality and looting. Now, his position is on nut neutrality, if I can get this stated correctly, is that both the advocates of far left and far right policies are nuts. So in that sense, he's neutral about that. But he does have strong feelings about looting, because he thinks all of the people in America that riot and then loot, those are degenerates. But in his view, if you're going to loot, then you should do it from a respectable position, i.e. you should run for Congress. That's sort of like the exact opposite of je ne sais quoi. But I think we have a clip of him explaining that in his own words?
I know some of you question my judgment letting these vandals have a seat at the table. But frankly, if we don't give them a seat at the table, they'll take the table. You see what I mean? And I think that makes it a relatively simple task. And I will be speaking at length about this tomorrow. Okay?
Yeah. So that's one of your candidates to replace Harry Reid. I'm kind of nervous if he takes over as the top dog of the Republican Party. I'm not comfortable with that. Another favorite is Clairvoyant. She ran an interesting campaign this year. She talked about equal payoffs for women, and her big gripe was that the people who took money from lobbyists in Congress, well, they're not to blame for what they do. I mean, they have to make money somehow, but if they're going to make money that way, then the women should get paid as much as the men to to advance polluted policies. Do you see what I mean? So she's a candidate, but I don't think really either one of them is going to win. As I was saying, if you know how the Republican Party bigwigs are thinking, you'll see that somebody else or some other groups are actually in line. One of the suggestions is that we need a leader in the Republican Party in the Senate who speaks Burmese. You may be saying to yourself, speaks Burmese? But why? Well, if you look at the political trends over recent years, and I mean over a lot of years actually, starting back in the 1960s, it looks like the fate of the Republican Party in voting, you see what I'm talking about, in elections, tends to vary directly with the interest of Burmese American voters. So that from a high back in about 1968 of 82%, we see that in recent years, according to these figures from the Dick Cheney for Sainthood Society, it has now dipped perilously to about 37% support for Republicans. So, as I say, the inside money is suggesting that the next top of the dog, dog pound Republican in Congress, maybe in both the Senate and the House, is going to be somebody who speaks Burmese. You heard it here first, I think. And then the other line of thought is we tend to put our foot in our mouth a lot, so why not let's have a dead speaker? I mean, as long as he was a Republican. And so, there are some obvious choices out there. Honest Abe is one of the last ones to be universally respected, almost universally, and he's going to keep his mouth shut about everything going on. Well, so in addition to having somebody else at the top, other than Harry Reid, maybe one of these Burmese speakers, what can we expect from this next legislative go-round here for the next couple of years? Number one, I've heard some talk that Republicans want to cut funding for Air Force One, and why? To spite Obama. I mean, you've seen enough of that already to not be surprised to hear it. But American entrepreneurs are always ready to come up with an alternative solution, and I understand that certain elements of the tractor industry, in fact, maybe more than a couple of tractor manufacturers, have already offered the president the use of Ground Force One, which is a pretty new age tractor as far as I can tell. I'm not saying that I'm an expert on tractors, but I guess pretty soon we're all going to have to know, well, a lot more about these tractors than we have in the past. If the president were sitting on one of these or riding one of these, because they say in this tractor movement for the tractor-driven economy, as far as I understand it, there are tractors of all sizes. So here, the president's tractor is a big boy, all right? It's a big boy. But they even have tractors, or they're about to make tractors so small that when you go into the Walmart, where the aisles are pretty wide, you can just drive your tractor straight from the parking lot into the facility, do your shopping, and then drive your tractor to pick up the kids after soccer practice. Something like that. Well, what else can we expect in this new session? Well, drones are very unpopular in some elements of our political spectrum. Like me, I don't much like drones going overseas doing dirty work where, you push a button, the drone goes over there, and you never see what happens except on video. You're not on the ground. So I don't like the use of drones as we now know it, but I'm also not clear about the new uses for drones. I just know it's being talked up in the Republican Party. Now, if it's for watering plants, you know, I'm all for that, if it's for watering plants. Another suggestion is helping you to find, you know, a good parking place. Send up your own drones. But I think the main thrust here is privatization of drones. As long as the government is going to have drones, then the idea is that all citizens should have a drone of their own to keep an eye on the other drones that are doing whatever the other drones are doing. You see? I'm not sure what kind of a political landscape this is going to be once all of this starts happening, but I have this other disturbing report here about how, and I can't really show it to you. I can only read from it. It's talking about how drones can be used to take out tractors. I don't understand what that's all about, and to take out other large cooking implements that are thousands of years old that might be used as weapons. Strange, isn't it? Well, it is strange. Next thing up, we know that with the Republicans in power, Obamacare is something that's going to be, you know, dealt with. Now, the Republicans have talked, and they voted many, many times. You know, probably more than 50 times they voted to defund Obamacare, but it doesn't look like there's really any traction for that, you know, because for one thing, the Supremes said, well, it's constitutional, so you can't undo it that way, and it's a question of getting enough votes. So I think what they're trying to do now is they're trying to just make certain changes in it, changes that will have the effect of, well, diminishing or changing the cost, diminishing the impact on cost or reducing overall costs. Look at some of these provisions, though. I've got a secret copy of what's being talked about here. The first provision may bother you. You can only have 2 of your household pets covered under the provisions that are being talked about now. And so you would have to select, you know, if you've got dogs and cats, you might have to select, you know, your 2 dogs or 1 cat and a dog, whatever. But if you've got an anaconda or you know, something else, you're going to have to make some hard choices here because you don't get to cover them all. I just I find it disturbing. But point number 2, as you can read along with me here, if you make more than $625,000, you can rent an elected official. Now, I'm not sure exactly how that is going to reduce the costs of Obamacare, and I'm not even sure how it changes the coverage per se, because frankly, I'm not quite able to rent a $625,000 congressperson, but I think if 3 or 4 of my, you know, lawyer friends got together with me, we could probably jointly rent one. You see what I'm saying? And also, this is the big fixer here. Some conditions are not going to be covered when you enroll in Obamacare. For example, unable to pronounce 4-syllable words. That's a problem that is very widespread in our society, and as far as I know, all of the cures are pretty expensive, like getting an education, which is also being priced out of the market. One that bothers me, you see it down here, laughed ass off and never had it replaced. I've certainly known people who laughed their ass off, and as far as I know, they never got it replaced. Well, there's going to be more emphasis also on protecting our boulders. That seems to me strange because most of our boulders have been sitting where they are for hundreds of years, not doing anything at all. And they're so heavy that they can't move anyway, so nobody's going to move them, so I don't understand why they need protecting. Now, if what they're talking about is our borders, all right, an argument can be made for protecting our borders, but it doesn't have to be with expensive manpower incrementally added, because in an area right close to my house, we have a border with some of those dangerous other countries, you know, actually about 6 of them, and it's protected entirely by bird life. And these are some pretty vicious birds. I tried to feed them one day, and I had to back off from that because they were dangerous. And I think that's the wave of the future, is using other life forms to do some of these nasty jobs that we keep. Well, and of course, they have sent some of these birds overseas to do other jobs in this kind of security and law enforcement field. They've sent them overseas, and they aren't getting paid very well. So I'm about to become a vicious bird protector advocate, as well as suggesting that they be used frivolously and efficiently. Okay, there's also the possibility that we're going to start fracking the Great Lakes. Oh, excuse me, I think they've typed that wrong here in my notes. I think they mean the Great Lakes, but they could mean the Great Legs. I'm not sure. And of course, the Republicans are likely to pursue that the Keystone Pipe dream, which will enable Canada to take its horrible tar sands, pump them through this country, and sell them to somebody else. Dadgummit. It's a weird environment that's ahead of us. And of course, people have been complaining for a long time about surveillance by, for example, the NSA and the FBI and God knows who else. And so the Republicans, understanding that this is a sensitive area, are talking about making changes to surveillance. I want to show you a video. Right.
I just wanted to explain to you people that this camera we're talking about is fascinating. It's a fascinating thing, and I just want y'all to get used to my using it for these purposes or porpoises or whichever they are. Okay? Thank you.
Yeah, you've seen him before. That's Mango Stroller, and if he's the guy in charge of changing the surveillance parameters that this government is currently establishing, then I am not real sure that anything important is going to change. But anyway, that's the man. That's the man right there. Now, the other thing that's happened is that the partisan Democrats have finally released a report on CIA torture, okay? And the Supreme Court is looking into that, and I'll get to the other thing they're looking for in a minute, but we can expect that a minority report to the CIA torture report will come out once the Republicans are there, because they want to emphasize that Miranda rights were read to all of these so-called terrorists, you know, who were subjected to waterboarding. It was along the lines of, you have the right to remain silent during your simulated drowning, which to me doesn't sound that convincing. Anyway, Supreme Court said that was okay. That was okay that we did that, but the Supreme Court has backed off of another position that's not very popular, and that was the decision, Citizens United, which said basically corporations are people and can spend as much money as they want, especially at election time. Now, the the Supreme Court now has said what they actually meant was that, that genetically modified organizations are the ones that have this right. Genetically modified organizations. Frankly, I'm not sure the difference between your ordinary organization and your genetically modified one, because we don't have labels. But while we're on the subject of that, and before we get to entertainment events, let me just point out that in response to the law passed in Vermont, some corporations who make genetically modified food are saying that they will now put anecdotes on the food labels. And that is, well, that is a minor concession, I think, to the people who want to know what they're actually eating. Other things that weren't covered I'm talking now about news stories that you may have missed in 2014. Elvis got back together. You see it up there on your screen? Well, he played a few events. They were not well attended. So as far as I can tell, he has, excuse me, he's gone back into retirement. He was working for a while there with Jen Sequoia on her campaign. I mean, he opened up, performed at some of her early campaign rallies, but I guess the clock has pretty much run out for him. He was wearing one of those new watches I told you about, the talking watch, the last time I saw him, and maybe it weighed him down. In other news you may not have noticed, scientists discovered the oldest known spatula in the entire world. I think we've got a picture of it there. This spatula is so large, and you see out on the pier, which was built by a native tribe, apparently this giant spatula was worshipped for years, centuries, and this native tribe brought sacrificial offerings to the giant spatula, and if I am correct in my assumptions, there's a related story about the discovery of a gigantic potato casserole in this region, which I think is directly connected with this spatula. Another story that you may not have noticed. Sit down and take a big slurp. Philadelphia is missing. Matter of fact, it's been missing for a long time. It's just that it's been missing since approximately 1955, according to information that's available to my researchers. But it's just now being admitted. It was last seen, I believe, in Pennsylvania, but it was surrounded it was surrounded by huge boulders, and they were, our boulders were being protected. So how it disappeared, I am not sure. I am absolutely amazed that this could have happened. Anyway, since most of you didn't know Philadelphia was missing, I guess it's of no ultimate consequence to the economy, except that before it disappeared, there was apparently a giant resurgence of the tractor building industry. Let's say I thought I brought that document. It's highly sensitive, but there may be a connection to what we were talking about earlier, and Jim Shorts may know something that the rest of us don't know. All right, the Pope Francis, as you know, is very popular, not only among people of the Catholic faith, but generally speaking, just popular among the rank and file of the American and European religious watchers. The religious watchers have for a long time wanted a pope who was with it, okay? And this pope, best we can tell, is really with it. You heard the other day that he said, your animals go to heaven. And I'm sure that made a whole lot of people happy, you know, because no pope has said that since Pius XII, if I recall correctly. But this pope is so cool, as a matter of fact, that he is letting, well, there's two things he's doing. First thing is, he is considering whether certain things need to be removed from the list of sins and just added to, you know, minor transgression, you know, sort of like the difference between a misdemeanor and a felony. So he's thinking about that. But the other thing he's doing is he's inviting you to nominate people for sainthood. And me, I was very interested to hear about that. So earlier this week, I called the Vatican, and I had some propositions of my own, but what I heard kind of disappointed me, and I taped the conversation so you could hear it too.
Thank you for your suggestions regarding candidates for sainthood. The Holy Father appreciates your input. Please be advised that Dick Cheney is no longer being considered for sainthood, for a variety of reasons.
What a blow. What a blow. I thought Dick was on a fast track there, but apparently not. So anyway, it's just as well, I suppose. It was a pipe dream of mine, sort of like that other pipe dream we were referring to earlier, the Keystone, you know, pipe dream. Anyway, as for other stories that weren't very well covered in 2014, this one may come as kind of a shock to you, but at Yale University, in a study that was completed early in the year, in March, there was a report is generated which suggests that the world ended quite a while ago. World ended. So according to the study, and I haven't read all of it because, you know, that's one of those things that, you know, it was on the shelf for a while, and then it seems like everybody was pulling it off the shelf because this was a touchy subject. Apparently the world ended some time ago, and what we're watching right now is just reruns, actual reruns. And I suppose that a case can be made because, after all, nothing ever seems to change, at least in terms of the big picture. You know what I'm saying? So if the world has ended, I'm certainly going to try to make the best of what's left of the reruns here before even those are pulled from the air or wherever they pull them from. So with all of that said, what's behind us, you know, Black Friday and the midterm elections and the stories you didn't hear, we are in the midst of the holiday season here. And I just have a few things to say about holiday etiquette, just a couple of quick thoughts. One is about Christmas cards that people send, and people have been doing that for years, and they've been backing off from it because, you know, it costs so much these days to put a stamp on a letter, so people are pursuing other ways. Like some people will just put their Christmas card up on Facebook. I did do that this year. I can reach a lot of people. But some people who aren't connected to the internet are just using the megaphone. They're going outside once a day, and they're just shouting, "Merry Christmas to you all, and to all a good night," or words to that effect. In other words, using whatever is at hand to reach people, and I think that's fine. But the other trend this year is discards, not Christmas cards, but Christmas discards. And I've sent out a few discards myself to people I think might use them, but the ones that I've been receiving from other people have proven to be useless. I mean, totally useless to me, the discards other people had, except that I did get a really useful manual for tractor repair, which I think is, I think I'm going to be able to use that here in the instant future. And I got a Fox News calendar, because the ones from Fox News that were being offered on TV, well, they're not available anymore, so I got last year's Fox News calendar. Anyway, I hope the rest of the holiday season is just great for you. It's been great for me, and we'll see you next year to talk about what's going on, like we always do once in a while. So until then, be good to yourself and drink lots of water. Bye.
I had recently led a crusade to dictate public morals. I was not known for my liberal views or my insistence on the independence of the judiciary. She was drawn to my metal file cabinets and my porcelain dinnerware. We both objected strongly to the widespread abuse of three-piece bistros. She had startling new scientific evidence that the papacy was involved. Together we saluted the cast iron stoves of our ancestors. And I stared at the zip-out linings, the solid chrome toothbrush, the 8-pound frozen carp. She stuck the linear accelerator into her fur-lined hope chest. Then I smiled at the seersucker shenanigans. I praised her split-level egalitarianism, her slush fund left by the bathroom window. Invariably, there were 24 photographers clicking away and shouting. The staff's enthusiasm embarrassed a number of the middle-aged men who wanted their draperies cleaned. She asked if the sperm whales actually had the largest and most complex brains in the animal kingdom, and I replied in the affirmative. Then we dove to nearly 2,000 feet without experiencing severe decompression. I come home from work sometimes. I come home from my job. I had a hard day at the office, dealing with a bunch of rubber snakes. One of the kids is in the driveway. He's shooting skeet with my rifle. He has your mother's eyes. I think he should give them back.